Hello. Gosh, I got a frog in my throat and a turtle on my hand. Oh, Double T, you knocked everything over. Happy Monday, you guys. So, yeah, y'all have been talking about the elephant in the room, which is the weather. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, we're all under some kind of warning. Blizzards, tornadoes. I had tornado warnings this morning. I think we might have had something this weekend. Or on Friday? I can't remember. Oh goodness. Um, so yeah, I'll issue this as a warning at the top here. Thank you, Joed. Um, I'm under this tornado high winds warning at this very moment. It started 6 minutes ago. It goes until 10 o'clock tonight. So that is usually the death knell for streaming. So if for any reason I go down, I will do everything I can to pop back up. Usually I'm knocking on wood, I'm crossing my fingers. I don't usually lose power and everything for terribly long. Usually it's this annoying like bloop bloop. I don't know why I sit at some kind of location where we've been known to lose water all the time, but I think the longest we've ever lost electricity was maybe a few hours overnight one time, and that was actually pretty recently. So anyway, you never know what's going to happen. This aging infrastructure and crazy weather. So I hope, let's see, Druid's thunderstorm snow. Somebody mentioned thunder snow the other day. It is a thing. Yeah, so it is totally nuts. Oh, and for some reason my son is calling me. Hopefully everything's okay there. If he calls me back, I might have to pause. Yeah, so spring, right? I don't know. Is this any worse than it usually is? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about the weather other than, yeah, what are you going to do? When it's raining, as long as the electricity is on, there's quilting to do, right? So anyway, I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. And obviously staying warm or cool or out of the rain or out of the snow. Yeah. I had a busy weekend. It was wonderful though. And I see Word and Bird Nerds here. She was there this weekend. It was AQSG's winter virtual seminar, and I was the chair for it. So I've been stressing out for weeks, really, really almost, well, since before the holidays, because that's when I had to start planning. But it came together. I mean, we had a few like tiny hiccups, but it was nothing that, caused major distress. I mean, we were able to quickly pivot. I always try to build in all of the redundancies. So like if my computer goes down, there's somebody else that's managing, all those things. Learned over the years in my career in instructional design and training. So anyway, I think it came off really wonderful. I got lots of great comments. So that just makes my heart swell with pride. Of course, I didn't do it alone. I had a wonderful group of volunteers. So anyway, my head is exploding with all of the information that I took in just sitting in other people's presentations, as the Zoom host. It's one of the great things, when you volunteer for things. Yeah, it takes up time and stuff, but you get to sometimes sit in like free stuff. So that was fun. Oh, that's great, Word and Bird Nerd. I'm so glad to hear that. We try to make it as similar to live seminar as possible. As close as we can get. I mean, obviously you can't really replicate being physically in a space with other people, but we do our best. And, I think people had fun. I think they learned some stuff. We had some newer presenters this year. Couple of folks that are truly either brand new to the organization or actually not even members. So we had an academic that came in and did a lecture, and I have not watched that one. I've seen her lectures at other places. So she's fascinating. And so because I got to chair the thing, I get access to everything. So I'm gonna go watch her presentation this week. As I have to edit them to get them available for a limited replay. So anyway, it was, like I said, super busy weekend. But I'm really proud of it. Um, and I hope it doesn't sound like I'm bragging. But sometimes these things, all in a day's work, right? And it's like a wedding. Things can go wrong. Things can do, things will pop up. It's always like that. There's always something that's going to go wrong. But for the most part, I think we had some really good planning, and I have to give myself a little pat on the back. So, let's see. Druid said took her forever to AV check. Wouldn't go on one chat. The chats. Yeah, your Wi-Fi people just emailed to say there are outages. Okay. So Druid may be having problems. We always have our backup with Robin, who is also here. So I think we're good. So yeah. Well, today I want to get back into the community quilts exhibit at QuiltCon. We looked at the bright color palette last Monday, and I learned that I think that was what it was called. It was called the bright color palette. And it was like pink and teal and green. And I feel like more of the groups picked that color palette than the blues. But I still think I can really take up a lot of time talking about these quilts. So I'm not baking in any reading today, but if we finish early, I could get some of the book read. And then Thursday, I'm gonna play. I think I'm planning on just maybe something short to talk to you about, and then more reading, because I want to finish Elizabeth Robertson's book. It's so interesting, and it was really funny. And I'm completely blanking on which which event it was this weekend, but somebody mentioned Elizabeth Wells Robertson's book, and I was like, "Do you mean this?" I was like, "We're reading it right now," so that was kind of exciting. So, all right. Well, one thing I wanted to mention. A friend of the show, Nikki Keating. She is one of the newer members of American Quilt Study Group. She is a therapist. She is a psychologist at Colgate University. And I've mentioned her before, and I'm putting the link in the chat. But she is conducting a survey, and it is about quilting communities, particularly online, and what are we using these communities, and how are we using these communities? So what are we using them for? How are we using them? Are they beneficial? Is there a point where their returns maybe aren't as great as we expect, because being online continually is maybe taking you in the wrong direction? So it was really interesting. And hearing her talk this weekend, she gave a talk this weekend. So her survey is going to be open probably until at least the beginning of the summer, so lots of time. And I've put this link in here. If you have a guild who might be interested in taking her survey, I can get you a thing that with a QR code and stuff, if you're interested in getting the word out about her survey. Just let me know. And I have, what did I do with it here? You guys probably saw me show this from QuiltCon. But anyway, lots of fun. I feel like I contributed to something big and scientific. So, Word Bernard says, you missed the beginning. You realize what the book was. I have a copy as well. Oh, okay. American Quilts? Yeah, I really wasn't familiar with American Quilts until I found it at seminar this past year in the silent auction. I ended up winning the copy. It seems like she's one that's just not mentioned as prominently as like the other books we've read. So yeah, it's interesting to me. And like I've said, I've done a tiny bit of research on her, and she's just as interesting. And I mean, she seemed like a very intelligent lady. She was a teacher, and she worked in the arts in public education in Chicago. So yeah. Yeah. Oh, I had a cool note written inside. Oh, that's cool. Word. I love finding stuff like that. Sometimes the little bits and pieces in the book that, previous owners and readers have tucked things in there. Very cool. Her brother was the president of Goucher. Oh my gosh. We got to talk, word nerd. I didn't realize she had Baltimore connections. That's wild. Oh my gosh. I wonder if she knew Dr. Dutton. All right. So let's look at some quilts. Given that I could hear the rain tumbling down. um, so let's see if we can get some goodness in here before the sky falls. Um, all right. So where's my screen? Where's my screen? I don't know why my monitors never want to save themselves properly. There we go. Okay. So, probably recognize this picture. I showed it last week. This is just one half of the room. And if you may remember, I said this pipe and drape, it's a little bit hard to see kind of, what you're looking at here, but this is like a zigzag. This is like a big string of pipe and drape that has been zigzagged. So you've got quilts on both sides, and then you've got another quilt like that is not visible here because it's the zigzag. A lot of quilts in this exhibit. And it was just a really cool exhibit. And I'll quickly read the placard about it, but it was an exhibit they do every year, and it's where the guilds get to choose what they're going to do. They come together and create a quilt that represents their guild. And for some of them, it's about the community aspect of it, making a community quilt. For others, it's, they come together and they're like, all right, we want to make something that represents our place. So for instance, the Baltimore quilt, the Modern Quilt Guild of Baltimore, I love theirs. It's so very Baltimore. It's got all kinds of Baltimore stuff on it. Others are more conceptual. And both approaches I think are fantastic. Now this year they had the choice of two different color palettes. And the first one, of course, is the blues. And then you can see this one here is that, if you missed the stream the other day, this one is the other color palette. A really bright bubblegum pink, and then like a paler pink, and then like this kind of, what did I decide it was? Artichoke or asparagus green. And then a couple of different colors of like a teal, and really, really pretty color palette. But then we have this monochromatic blue also. So, um, so for community outreach, the quilts are all for sale, and any that are purchased, the money goes towards a local nonprofit charitable arts organization type thing in Raleigh, which is where QuiltCon was. And then, if their quilt doesn't sell, it goes back to the guild, and the guild could, auction it off. They could do whatever they want with it. So it's a pretty cool thing. So this is what they say about it. Community outreach. The Community Outreach Challenge is one of the Modern Quilt Guild's largest scale philanthropic projects. This year, we asked members to make quilts that use a medallion style. So there has to be a medallion in these quilts. And, as I mentioned, and if you saw last week, sometimes they were very literal. Think about any medallion quilts you've seen, vintage, antique, or contemporary. It's a thing in the center. That is what makes a medallion. But some of them like really stretched the idea of what a medallion is, and I love that. Yes, traditionally the medallion is a thing in the middle, a big square or a big circle or an oval or something. But where they stretch that idea, I think was really clever. So they had two prescribed color palettes that they could choose from. And many of these quilts are for sale at QuiltCon, with all funds going to local Raleigh nonprofit art givers. And then they had a thing where you could scan and etc. So let me now go to pictures. Now, I have to tell you, So now this picture, actually, now you can see, like, I'm standing right in the center at the front of the room. So you can see how there's like a whole bunch of like, it was basically like 4 rows of these zigzag things. There is one quilt in here. Somebody talked to me while I was taking a picture of it, and I walked away without getting the placard. I feel terrible. I can zoom in close enough. It's okay, Druid. Don't sweat it. I'll just, if anybody has a burning desire, I will spell out the handles. You know, the names of their handles. We did this last week where Druid put in their Instagram handles, but I'll spell them out. So if you want to go check out the guild on Instagram, or I'll try to spell out everything so that you'll be able to see it. So write it down. So let's get started. This is what met you as soon as you walked in, and you're, this is pretty amazing. This is a beautiful quilt. And oh, by the way, we'll come back to this one. I have the details in towards the end. So this is the one, unfortunately, that I was bad and did not get. I did not get the details on this one. Although I can tell you what it is called. It is called Hexagonal Medallion. And I'm truly struggling to see. I think it might be Oklahoma Modern Quilt Guild, but I don't want to say for sure because it's just too blurry, you know, when I zoom into this little placard. So my apologies to the Quilt Guild that made this quilt. It's a lovely quilt. I think it's very cool. You know, you think about medallion, of course. Hexies, very, very prominent in contemporary quilting and in the modern quilting movement. Hexagons, people love them. This one is like a shattered hexagon, or shattered hexagons. Like, it's just, you know, the visually what they did here, I think, is so cool. And I won't plague you with my commentary from last time, which is, what if the colors were reversed? I think this is definitely true with these quilts as well. You know, when you think about the fact they had this this color palette of varying shades of blue, from this very, very pale, like, I'm not sure, I think in some of these this actually might just be white. And I think in some it's just a hint of an ice blue. But so from that very, very pale all the way up to this, it's almost black. It's like this deep midnight blue, which I love. Like, that's such a cool color because it reads as black, but you get into the right light, it's a midnight blue. It looks like the sky. Very, very cool stuff. Okay, this one, this one's kind of special because a friend is involved with this one. So, and I have a picture of her and her friend. This is the Knoxville Modern Quilt Guild. Their handle is at Knox, KNOX MGQ. So it's pretty simple. And this is called Mountain Glow. And it was funny. I said they did this streak of lightning piece here for the medallion. And I was like, ooh, is that like Tennessee lightning? Wink, wink. And they kind of looked at me and they were like, huh? And I was like, you know, the moonshine, the hooch. And they were both like, oh my gosh, we didn't even think about that. I'm wondering maybe if one of their makers did think about that. I'm not sure. But I thought it was kind of funny. But yeah, so they told me that, you know, there's the representation of, you know, the mountains, the trees. You know, Tennessee's got a very, you know, wide and varied landscape, but the Great Smoky Mountains are prominent there. So that's kind of all the things they were thinking about. So what they say, this quilt is an improvisational composition designed and pieced by members of the Knoxville Modern Quilt Guild. It is inspired by the Smoky Mountains and blends rolling mountains, winding paths, and night skies into a layered landscape. Appalachian motifs echo both the region's natural forms and its traditional quilting heritage, rendered here in bold blues and whites. So their lightest color sounds like it was indeed white. And so This is my dear friend Mary Kay Waldvogel. You have probably heard me mention her before. She is writer of a bunch of wonderful books. The Patchwork Souvenirs, which is about the 1933 Sears contest, which she wrote with Barbara Brackman. Soft Covers for Hard Times, which is about Depression era quilting. And she's written a number of other books. There's the Childhood Treasures book about doll quilts. She's written a book about Civil War quilts with Betts Ramsey. So she's a giant. I stand upon her shoulders and I'm grateful. And then this is her friend Sherry, who is also a member of the guild. And I think Sherry said she did the trees. So, hey, Jill. So this was fun to be able to get a picture with them. Oh, and I took a second picture where they were looking at me. Okay, so this one is called Around the Block. And this is by the Palm Beach Modern Quilt Guild, and their handle is very simple, at Palm Beach MQG. So Around the Block approaches a classic quilt structure with a modern eye. The reimagined traditional blocks are a visual ode to the structures that frame our daily existence. Oh, get deep there, my friends. Connecting us to one another in a metaphor for how individual lives are woven together, forming the rich, complex tapestry of a community. I love that. And I just love what they did here. I mean, it's, the medallion is there in the center, but look at how they did the medallion borders. The you think about Welsh quilts, Amish quilts. You're familiar with these medallion type things that then have borders. Well, they're playing with their borders here. Um, they they've got this asymmetrical thing going on. I love it. um, very very neat with this just sort of traditional piecing in here. I just think this one was really striking. And some of these, I hope they sold them. And I hope that these are going to be prominently displayed somewhere because so many, I mean, all of these quilts were fantastic. And I had a hard time on last Monday when we were looking at the other color palette. I was like, okay, this one's my favorite. All right, this one's my favorite. No, they were all my favorites. They were all so fantastic. It just, and the way that the guild would come together, and I realized that some of these guilds have really really big membership, and they might have, and of course with modern quilt guilds, you have lots of newer folks coming in. Modern quilting really tends to attract younger and newer quilters, and not necessarily to say like all the new quilters are young quilters, they're not. But there is something I think about modern quilts, and especially the sort of entry level patterns that come out in the magazines, and they're very welcoming and they're approachable. And so I know some of the guilds, with their larger membership, and they have then varying levels of ability. You've got the brand new quilter who is just getting their piecing together and learning how to do that, and then you've got people that have been quilting for decades. And so the way that some of these guilds came together and figured out how to manage that, newbies and experts, and coming together to create these. And then in other cases, you have some smaller guilds that are, probably been around for a long time. It's kind of a core group that meets. And, even with the smaller group, they still sort of divided and conquered, what they were going to create. And I don't know. It just always like, I don't know. I just get so excited to look at this stuff and think, what their planning process must have been like, and the decisions they made, etc. So this one's very cool. All right. Notice this one has got a lot of the lighter colors. How would this look different to us if they had used the dark midnight blue for the background, and say those arrows had been in, or those geese had been in the paler colors? Could look very different. So this one is called Whirligig, and it is by the Calgary Modern Quilt Guild. Their handle is another easy one. It's at Calgary MQG. Um, and they say Whirligig is a collective guild project and was selected from original designs created by individual members. The inspiration for the design is wind-driven metal art. We've seen. Have you seen these? These kind of like. Um, I know that there's things that. I mean, I guess there's like these original back in the day kind of wind turbine like sculptures. I think over the years they've created, smaller versions like that you can kind of buy commercially, like for your garden and stuff. But this definitely gives me that, that those sculptures reminds me. The designer wanted the design to be funky, yet still easy to sew for guild members of all skill levels. See what I just said? This is the first time I'm reading this and exactly what I was saying. The quilt is composed of sections, each of which is further divided into subsections. In the end, what looks like a complicated quilt is not actually complicated at all. So, yeah, I love that. I think it's thoughtful design, where they created opportunities for, complexity as well as the hand that the entry level hand being able to have some visibility in this. And oh gosh, look, gorgeous, gorgeous! Look at the quilting in here. Look at this. They've got all these little oh gosh, I don't know, what do you call this? Like half feathers, triangle feathers. I don't know. Um, I like that little loopy design, and I love all of this sort of angular quilting. Just lots of movement. If you think about this, movement I think is important in as a concept when you're looking at any kind of artwork, because you don't want artwork to be stagnant. You don't want like the eye to just be drawn to like one corner and not look at anything else. You want your eye to be drawn to something and then, oh, what's this over here? Oh my goodness, what's that? So that's what we talk about when we say movement. And the quilting in this um is just going in all kinds of different directions. Um Although it is restrained. It's not like it's chaotic. They're closed in these boxes, but yeah, that contributes to the movement. The flying geese contribute to movement. This block, I'm not sure what this block is called, but the way that they've done the colors with it, it's like a little whirligig. Um so yeah, this is very I think very successful. So Jill said, are these also quilted by more than one person? I think it depended on the guild. Um some of them, they used like one particular long armor, who I would assume is, a member who lent their long arming skills, ability to do this. I'm trying to think. I think there were a couple that did say there was a couple of people that quilted them. Yeah. So it really depends on the guild, I guess. Very neat. This one, and I mean, you see what I mean? I'll just keep beating the horse dead. How the look and feel changes based on how they utilize the colors. I mean, this is all blue. We don't have that variety of the color wheel that we did with the bright palette. You have to make different decisions, different kinds of decisions when you're dealing with like basically well, I mean, it's monochromatic is what we would call it. So this is called Stars Sparkle. And this is by the Las Vegas Modern Quilt Guild. Their handle, another easy one, it's LVMQG. And they say, our medallion is a tie-dye star from the class held over the summer of 2025. How cool. I love the fact that some of these guilds, because they are teaching guilds, they obviously have lecturers, speakers and teachers that come, and it sounds like they had some type of I don't know if it was tie dyeing or specifically a tie dyed star, but look at that, that is so cool. um and I love the fact that they, it was a group lesson, in making this thing, and then they incorporated it right into the quilt. Um, so they say the members made their version of stars to make up our sky, and it was quilted by member Gina Fides. Her last name is spelled Fiddes. Fides. Um, so goodness gracious, this is beautiful. I'm partial to a star. And look at the quilting in here. It's all of these like beautiful curvy, like undulating lines that are balancing the pointiness of the stars, right? And I love that they're different stars. It's not all the same star. I'm terrible about remembering what the stars are called, but I think we've got an Ohio star. I think this is a Lemoyne. I think the Lemoyne is 8 points. I think. Oh gosh, you guys, correct me, please. And then you've got these like wild, fanciful stars that are like layered on themselves. There's that whirligig thing again. Um, very, very neat. And I'm kind of wondering, in the context of this past summer, I'm kind of running through the timeline in my head. I certainly this the theme and the color palettes, etc., would have had to have been announced before they started work on this. Um, so I'm guessing that whoever's star that is in the middle, the tie dye, it seems like they probably made a conscious decision to use the blues that would be able to be picked up in this quilt. And although I don't know how strict they were about colors and things. It seemed to me at first I thought it was, and I think I mentioned this the other day. At first I thought it was a particular fabric company that sponsored this, and I feel like in the past it has been, and maybe not every year, but and maybe I'm mixing this up with something else. But I was thinking it was a particular fabric company, and the palette needed to come from their solids. But I don't think that's the case. Actually, the case. I think they issued probably like um I don't know if they would have been like Pantone colors, hex colors, whatever. They issued some kind of specifics about colors. And I kind of like how some of the guilds snuck in some printed stuff. They probably had like some kind of instructions that were like, don't use prints. Don't use a whole lot of them if you do. Um, but still, they got a little bit in there, and I like that. I think that's a little bit brings some interest to the quilt. Okay. I'm sorry. I cannot take a picture straight on. For some reason they're always tilted slightly. I thought I had straightened all of these, but I guess I didn't. So this beauty, um and gosh, where they went with that, the pale blue, looks like they kind of did two different versions of it, and they've almost got this sort of teal greenish blue in here. And also look at these wavy patterns, that movement. So this is called medallions are square, and they don't provide a handle, but the guild is called the Gooses. um, so they say, around and around we go, leaning on each other during hard times and cheering each other's wins. So around and around we went, blending styles, shaking things up, each one taking a round as we worked our way out on this medallion challenge. The most challenging part, making it not square. um, so it sounds like, and I don't know anything about the Gooses. I'm wondering if this is a smaller guild, or I don't know where they're from. But it sounds to me like they probably did this like as a round robin, and a round robin quilt. You're starting with in the center or a particular part. It's usually a medallion, and you make the part, and then it goes to the next person who does the next border, and then it goes to the next person who does the next border, and so on. So it seems like that is probably what they did. And that's another super cool way of doing the thing and passing it on to the next person and having all of this community around the quilt. Another great one. And here's another one, a riot of pattern. And you guys know me, I'm a more is more person. So these with lots and lots of things going on just make my heart sing. So this one is called A House Divided. And it was made by the Greensboro Modern Quilt Guild, which should be Greensboro, North Carolina, I assume. Their handle is at Greensboro Modern Quilters. And this is what they say. Though blue often evokes feelings of calm to us in North Carolina, so yes, I was correct, the colors of this palette evoke college sports fanaticism. Yes, indeed. For those of you that don't know North Carolina very well, this sort of pale baby blue is the color of the Tar Heels. And their rivals are the Wolf Pack. So, my grandfather was a Tar Heels fan. My cousin went to North Carolina State, which is the Wolf Pack. Oh boy, so definitely a house divided. Oh, and Tar Heels are oh no, see, Tar Heels are Duke. Well, no, Duke Blue Devils. So I guess that's like the Tar Heels is like the. Am I right about that? Why am I doubting myself right now? Tar Heels is the like the nickname, um, and Duke is the Blue Devil is their mascot. Okay, it's here in the. So the colors of this palette evoke college sports fanaticism in this fractured medallion style. So yes, Bird Nerd noted it. This is just kind of like that other one where you've got all of these different things going on and some kind of I feel like they stretched the more traditional stuff and made it much funkier because I mean these geese are very funky. I love that. And I get these stars. I mean, wow, so cool. So they say in this fractured medallion style quilt, Duke Blue and Carolina Blue compete for. Okay, so Carolina. Yeah, I should be ashamed of myself. My dad's whole family is from this region, and every family gathering I'd hear this stuff. So it's Duke. Is it Carolina State? I am never going to remember this, you guys. And I'm sure you're going, stop talking about sports teams. So anyway, they compete for the spotlight in each round of this quilt. As they fight for the win, each shade of blue leaves us with an energetic feeling of victory, regardless of which side of the divided house you call home. Okay, University of North Carolina versus North Carolina State. North Carolina State is the Wolf Pack, and their colors are like red and black, red and white. Red is definitely in there for sure. Okay, and then University of North Carolina. Okay, and then Duke. Duke is the Blue Devils. A lot of blue between University of North Carolina and Duke. Oh, but I love this. I guess this piano key piecing, or I don't know. It's got lots of different names that they call this. But I love that. And again, like those diagonals here, movement. Not necessarily with the quilting, because look, the quilting, with some exceptions, is pretty straightforward. They've got the bubbly like pebble quilting in here in the center, but everything else is there's straight lines. And I think that is an important part of the design, right? So you've got all of this busyness. I think it probably would have been overwhelming to this quilt if there was a whole bunch of customized quilting in here instead of these lines, right? Not to say it wouldn't have also been fantastic, because more is more, but I think that it could have been overwhelming to this quilt, perhaps. House divided. Okay, this one, I have a little bit of partiality towards the ones that you can look at and figure out where it's from. I do enjoy that. Oh, Wernberg Nerd said Wolfpack is black and red. Yeah. Jill and I, we had to run some errands when we were at QuiltCon, and we ended up going to a FedEx printing place right across the street from part of NC State campus. And we were like, oh, this is why the traffic is so bad at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Classes are getting out. Okay. So this one is called In with the Rain. And it should come as no surprise that this is the Seattle Modern Quilt Guild. We have the Space Needle. Their handle is Seattle MQG. Another easy one. Our love letter to Seattle, where rain is not simply endured, it is part of the city's identity. It shapes our culture, energy, and creative spirit. Look past the shroud of our weather to find a city both innovative and resilient, moody and vibrant. From our morning coffees to our bustling markets, life glistens in shifting blues while Mount Rainier stands watch over it all. This reminds me of a beautiful postcard. Again, Mount Rainier and the Space Needle are, obviously, if you're from the U.S., you probably recognize this, even if I've actually never been to Washington State. My son has, but I haven't. But I still know what this is because I've seen it enough times, in, various media and stuff. Another thing that they really did successfully with the movement in this quilt are these kind of exaggerated Drunkard's Path blocks here. And I love this. This is something that the modern quilters have played a lot with, these like very basic blocks. And Drunkard's Path is an interesting one because you've got that like really dramatic curve. And sometimes it's just a teeny little curve and it's a little bit in the corner, and sometimes it's really dramatically big, and the background of the block, I guess is what you call it, is just this little, curved, squared off bit. So when you put all this together, and I mean, you guys know probably generally what a Drunkard's Path, like a traditional Drunkard's Path block, looks like. You put 4 of them together, and depending on how you turn them, you can get this kind of like wobbly looking lines. You can get something that's kind of very linear, and it's like log cabins, log cabin blocks. Depending on what you do with the color and the orientation, you get all of these different patterns. And I just love what they have done here is it does not read at all like Drunkard's Path. It reads like organic. It's sort of floral, sort of leafy, I guess, is how it reads to me. So I really love that. And then just this really bold diagonal, and how, they've done this almost like, color shift, with the monochromatics. It's a very successful one. I really like this. This one is fun. Now, this is one of those ones where I remember I said they really stretched the quote unquote medallion rule. This one to me, like, is this the medallion here in the center of these 2 pieces? Like, is that the medallion, or is one of them the medallion? Like, what's going on here? Is this whole thing like a giant, like, exploded medallion? Well, let's find out. So this one, I feel like the blues, we've got a number of the guilds outside the US grabbed the blue color palette. So this is by the Glasgow Modern Quilt Guild. Of course, Glasgow is Scotland. And their handle is Glasgow Modern Quilt Guild. And Glasgow is spelled Glasgow. So Glasgow Modern Quilt Guild. And they said, our medallion quilt was made with members adding a row each. It draws inspiration from Glasgow and includes codes, landmarks, and much more. Have a look and take a tour through our city. Play I Spy and see what you can find. I love that. So I have never been to Glasgow, so I may not know what I'm looking at, but it seems like, so these look like almost like traffic cones. So I'm wondering, is that reminiscent of, here's a bell, a bird, a tree. I can't quite tell this looks like some type of building maybe. Um, this checkerboard, I know that, I don't know, crosswalks in England, they call them zebra crossings because they're stripy, but I don't know, if that's like a crosswalk or if there's cobblestones, or I'm not sure. If anybody here has been to Glasgow, Word and Bird Nerd, I know you travel a lot in the British Isles, so I don't know if you know Glasgow at all. Yeah, very interesting things to look at here. Um, and then I don't know, is this letters? Is this some lettering up here? I don't know. Um, and here is an example where the quilting itself, these spirals, very curvy, where most of the quilt of the piecing itself is very angular. You don't have, these pieces here kind of or make circles, rounded things. Um, Word and Bird Nerd hasn't been to Glasgow. Yes, the Sky. I didn't even remember that. The Scottish flag is blue and white, so they definitely have the right color. And that, my guess, might have been behind their choice. If the with the Scottish flag being blue and white. Um, yeah, pretty neat. I wish I could have. Oh, let's see. She says the traffic cone is a symbol of celebration that appeared on top of a statue, like when they qualify for a football match, etc. Okay, well that's cool to know that. Um, yeah, I wish I could have talked to somebody, from that guild. No idea if anybody from that guild was there. This, I think I mentioned the other day, this exhibit was upstairs on the fourth floor, in a giant ballroom that was beside the lecture ballroom where all the lectures were. And so if you didn't do a lecture and you had no reason to go up there, you wouldn't have noticed it. And, if you read your program, there was information. There were definitely signs everywhere. But, with all of the crazy, just energy that QuiltCon exudes, and, it's overwhelming. Even, this was probably my sixth or seventh QuiltCon. And it's still overwhelming. There's just so much to look at, so much to do. I think it's very easy for these quilts to have been overlooked by some people that visited, just because, you run out of time if you're not just constantly looking at quilts. All right. Very cool. Look at this. This one's interesting. I don't remember who did this one. Let's see. This one is called Currents Within. And this is by the San Diego Modern Quilt Guild. Their handle is San Diego Modern Quilt Guild. um, and so they say, this quilt captures the shifting flow of water, its quiet depths, its motion, and its pull. San Diego's right on the water. The center is calm, a point of reflection from which energy expands in all directions. Each section mirrors the fluid movement of waves and currents, guiding the eye like ripples expanding across a still surface. This piece is meant to honor balance as a meditation on flow, connection, and transformation. Oh, okay. So Word Birdner says the title of the Glasgow quilt is the title of a famous song. Oh, interesting. I belong to Glasgow. Okay. Yeah, there are definitely a few things, I think, in some of these quilts that you really it's a drinking song. Of course it is. Having quite a few ancestors who are Scottish, I can tell you that orientation towards drink and song is very strong in my family. Um, so as far as this one, oh my goodness, I'm just realizing what the quilting is. I kind of thought they were just clamshells, but they're not. How interesting. So this is kind of, I don't know what you call this. So it's sort of clamshell like, but it's like the clamshells kind of are like on top of each other. And I guess this is the unit here. Or maybe not. I mean, that's the, I don't know. I don't know, you guys. I don't know what the discrete unit is. I feel like maybe it's this twisty looking four-petaled deal, but um yeah, that's a really interesting design. And as we've moon slices, I like that. Yeah, kind of like the phases of the moon. I mean, I'm definitely seeing clamshell. This one, this right here sticks out to me with that little sliver on top. But also this sort of four-pointed like star twinkle. Um, but this is another great example of the quilting balancing the piecing. So the piecing is all very straight lines, corners, triangular, rectangular, and then you've got the soft swirls of this pattern. Um, very neat, very cool. And this one it's very simple in, you know, if you put it up next to some of these like the More is More medallions. This is very simple. This has definitely got like a quiet energy about it, because you do have stuff going on here. You've got movement going on here, but it also kind of lets your eye rest in a lot of places. These outer pieces for sure. So, and I like the symmetry. There's definitely symmetry here. Um, I feel like this is one of those quilts that looks very simple, but that's deceiving. In terms of getting the symmetry and this kind of diagonal aspect here. I think there was definitely some planning and thought behind this. This wasn't just like, let's throw together a bunch of different borders around a center. Not to say that any of these groups did that. I think these are all very well thought out quilts. All right. This one, in terms of quilts that were made geographically near to me, this is fantastic. So this is actually the DC Modern Quilt Guild, and their handle is DCMQG. Very simple. So Washington, D.C., and they call this DMV Stitched in Blue. If you're a local, DMV means D.C., Maryland, Virginia. The DMV, we share a lot. We've got multiple ball teams. That's baseball and football. DC's also got basketball. We share things because we are Southern Maryland, and yeah, word birdered. Yes, that used to be what the DMV was. You'd see it on maps because of the Delmarva Peninsula. So if you look closely at a map of Maryland, particularly, Maryland's got this like little dingle dongle thing that hangs off the side on the shore. And that being called the Eastern Shore of Maryland, but Delaware hangs down kind of like the outside of it, and then Virginia is kind of at the bottom. So the Delmarva Peninsula was often referred to as DMV, but media, weathercasters, our news stations, and I'd say in the past 20 years have been referring to DMV means Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And our beltways are yeah, I knew you grew up in Maryland, but I think this is probably something that has developed since you left here. And I know you traveled here a lot because your dad was still here. But it is definitely something I've noticed probably in the last 20 years, that and maybe longer, I don't know, but yeah. If you know DC very well, all of this stuff on here makes sense to you. So a couple things that I can point out that I know as a Virginia native. I grew up right outside of DC, like within like stone's throw. So Virginia, the dogwood flower is the Virginia flower. You got the Washington Monument. You got, I'm assuming this is the White House. I think this is probably a nod to the pandas. This is a nod to the DC map. I'm sorry, map. DC flag. You'll see this on their license plates. This like the stripes and the stars. Here's an interesting thing about DC. Their motto, and it is printed right on the bottom of their license plates, is taxation without representation. Which, if you remember the Boston Tea Party, that was a fight about taxation without representation. Well, Washington, D.C. is an oddball thing, and trying to explain what Washington, D.C. is to people is kind of difficult. And think about this. You know, many of you here, of course, in the chat, you're all Americans, but you know, many of us that come here are from the US. But I think about, we've got a handful of folks that we know are Canada, the UK, and, you know, a few other countries. And to try and explain, you know, what the United States is, you know, as a collection of these states and their state governments, and you know, we all have like kind of our, you know, particularly if you've lived in a state for a long time, you have like your allegiance to your state. I feel like I have allegiance to both Maryland and Virginia because I grew up in Virginia, but and my family still lives there. But I've been in Maryland for almost 30 years, so you know, but I just think some of these things you probably would just never, you just never guess if you didn't know. Like it's one of these. This is like one of these. If you know things. But the thing about Washington D.C. is it is a city. It is our nation's capital. Every state has its own state capital, but our nation's capital is Washington. And in our federal Congress and Senate, or I'm sorry, House of Representatives and Senate, there is a representative of Washington D.C. They get to sit in on the congressional work, our legislators, but they don't get to vote. And this is the same thing with our territories. So Puerto Rico, Guam, the Marshall Islands, uh, and there's another one, I think. Oh, yeah, U.S. Virgin Islands, I think. I think that might be everybody. So they have representatives that sit there too, but they don't get to vote. Washington, D.C. residents pay taxes. They pay federal taxes. Now, I don't think that like Puerto Rico and Guam, they have their own kind of, because they're territories, they have like kind of like a specialty government situation, like how they fit in. I think in a lot of ways it's not fair. But the DC residents, again, it's like a weird, like, it's just a weird citizenship that they have if they are natives and live in DC. Lots of people actually live in Maryland. Lots of people that say they live in DC actually live in Southern Maryland or in Northern Virginia. But there are people that live in Washington, D.C., and they do not have the same representative government that I have being in Maryland or that I had living in Virginia. It's very odd. Nobody talks about it very much. But I always find it so interesting that their license plates literally say taxation without representation because Washington, D.C. residents pay federal taxes, but their representative in Congress does not get to vote. So now that you've learned something bizarre about our locality here, yes, we have these adorable little blue crabs here. We also have down on the Virginia side the cardinal, which it looks like a blue jay, but Virginia's state bird is actually the cardinal. I'm thinking this is possibly either Richmond State House. It could be Mount Vernon. You have the Virginia here. This would be the Virginia Quilt Museum. You see the little teeny logo that tells you this is the Virginia Quilt Museum, and they if you've looked at a picture of where they are now, they moved a couple years ago, and they are in this old mill, and this is like the granary or whatever, and then this is the building, and it's connected by this little doohickey walkway thing. So that's a nod to them. I cannot remember what this is. I'm completely blanking on that. We've got a little bit of Maryland flag kind of going on here. We've got Do you know what the Maryland flag looks like? It's got some stripes, offset stripes. Um, this is at the National Harbor. The National Harbor has, oh, Dulles. Yes, you're right. That was Dulles. Um, the National Harbor has one of those giant, like the Eye of London. It's a giant Ferris wheel that you can basically get in, and each of these is like the size of a room, like a room in your house. You can literally like rent these things, and a bunch of people can get in them. It's not like, a little seat with two people. It is a big, like, cage essentially, that multiple people can be in. So I've never ridden in it, but I have been up close enough to realize how big it actually is. It from a distance you're like, oh look, it's a Ferris wheel, but up close, holy moly, these things are big. um I don't know how it compares in size to the Eye in London. I feel like it's comparable. It may be a little bit smaller, but I feel like it's comparable. um and so in some of the last few things, like this little doohickey thing is on the Maryland flag. And of course, Maryland, the state. And then this is a nod to our horse racing tradition in Maryland, Pimlico. Black Eyed Susan is our state flower, and Oriole Park. So I think they did a fantastic job of just getting all of these different, Maryland, Virginia, DC things, right? So Robin says, oh no, tons of noise happening. Kelly decided. Oh no, I'm sorry, Robin. Well, you know what, Kelly? Did the carpet have to be shampooed right now? You can always watch later. All right. So, oh, I didn't read. I talked nonstop about this quilt, but I did not read the details. So, this is what they say. DMV stands for District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, 3 places woven together by history, culture, and breathtaking landscapes. The majesty of the region shines in its iconic monuments, thriving cities, and peaceful countryside. And even though the DMV covers a wide area, there's a feeling of closeness and community that makes us united, like a circle of dear friends. Here, our differences bring us together, making every connection warmer and every story more meaningful. Oh, that was very sweet. I like that. So very cool. So that's that one. Hearts, yep. Virginia's for lovers, yep. With the little hearts down here. They really packed a lot in this. I think it's very cool. I'm hoping that maybe, if they didn't sell this in Raleigh, that maybe it will go to some place in, DC, Maryland, Virginia to be, adored and looked at by, um, our locals. Okay, on to the next one. So this one, all right, come on. This one is called We All Play Nicely Together. And this one is by the Brisbane Modern Quilt Guild. And so another one, this one's from Down Under. And Brisbane, their handle it's Brisbane MQG. And Brisbane is spelled BRISBANE MQG. So Brisbane Modern Quilt. This strikes me as another one where, they did maybe something round robin, or, each person contributed a piece of the medallion borders. Let's see what they say. This quilt is a mix of pieced and solid connections, or solid sections, constructed in the round with a group pieced friends block in the center, as our center. So yeah, the little people, oh my gosh, this is so adorable. And these are pieced. See, yeah, oh my gosh, okay. Their little bodies are actually pieced. I'm wondering if the head might be appliqued. But yeah, those are pieced people. That is amazing. This block was paper pieced using a pattern brought from Quilt Fabrication. I'm not familiar with that. I'm guessing they're like a pattern company. Not familiar with that. Our medallion quilt was inspired by the Jen Kingwell designed Dalesford quilt. Now, Jen Kingwell is a very well-known Australian quilter. Her quilts are amazing. I have a number of her patterns. I have yet to try one of them, but They're real dazzlers, like just eye candy. It has been edge to edge quilted with Creative Stitches Radio Waves pattern by Jan Owen. Oh, I see. Oh my gosh, they almost look like little Wi-Fi signals. Look how it goes back and forth, kind of like a little cone, like a cone shaped. And they snuck a lot of prints in here. And I like that. I think that's pretty cool. Um, Look at that, little stars. Oh, I love it. This is a plaid. Oh, they got a lot in there. Oh, I love these little monkey wrenches, or turn dash. There's a couple different names for that pattern. And of course the geese. There's a lot of geese in these quilts, I noticed. Um, and I think about, again, going back to the fact that in many of these guilds had contributors of various, levels of experience. I think that piecing flying geese, I think, is a really good skill builder. So I'm kind of wondering if that's might be what's behind the geese being a big part of some of these quilts. Also, when you get into those ones with, I think it was a couple quilts ago where you've got something curving with the geese, like funky geese, different sizes of geese. That's when you're taking it up a level. So, I see the ability with something as simple as flying geese, or, even a turn dash, monkey wrench, that you can do like this very straightforward traditional piecing of it. It's a skill builder. And then you take it up a notch to like the graduate level where you start, like, it's improv, or it curves, or it does something interesting. Um, so and that's what's so beautiful about quilting. There are the simple lessons to be learned. Oh, look, here's bow ties down here. There's these simple lessons to be learned. But I think you can always keep refining your skills, and then you can take everything up a notch. And of course, the people that I love to hate, and I say this jokingly, really, but the newbie quilters that they don't know what they don't know. So they go out and find like the most complicated pattern known to man. And then they execute it in a way that makes it look like they've been quilting since birth. And you look at it and they're like, yeah, this is my first quilt. I have a couple mistakes. And you're like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, I've been quilting for many, many moons, and I can't accomplish some of the just amazing work that some newbies do. So, yeah, I love this one. This has got lots of traditional stuff in it. Very neat. All right, look at this one. Now, this one has got this very beautiful symmetry, and then when you get to the medallion in the center is when things are different. So let's see who made this one. All right, so this one, oh crud, did I just close that? Oh, here we go. This one is called Around Albany. Now, I'm going to go ahead and assume this is Albany, New York. Their quilt guild is the Capital District Modern Quilt Guild. And their handle is Capital District MQG. So yeah, I'm pretty sure this is, this is definitely Albany, New York. So this is what they say. The motifs used in this quilt represent meaningful parts of Albany and the Capital District. We chose the blue and white color scheme to reflect the Dutch heritage of the area, and began with a custom New York Beauty medallion as the centerpiece. So very cool. They have a nod to the Dutch heritage. There's lots of Dutch history there. Probably if you remember when I read Florence Pito's first book, Historic Quilts, she talks a lot about the Dutch areas in New York because it's where she was from. And she did a lot of research into those quilts, and and into the area itself. And she procured or identified a ton of quilts with, like, Dutch settler ancestry in them. And then, of course, the New York Beauty here in the center, um, those skinny little New York Beauty, I don't know, what do you call them? Rays. I guess they're like sun rays. I don't know. They're difficult. That's really hard. So our design grew to include abstract tulips, checkerboard tiles, and other geometric patterns that can be seen around the city of Albany. Okay, so tulips. Um, I'm guessing that they're calling these, maybe these corner pieces are sort of abstracted tulips. Um, I mean, this is a very interesting modern take on a star with this New York Beauty in the center. And then, like I said, curving the curving geese. I mean, come on. That's an advanced technique. um and then, these different types of stars I think are always so intriguing. And look at all of this custom quilting, you guys. I think this is a nice balance. I mean, looking at some of those like really busy medallions that I absolutely like, just my mouth waters when I see them because they're so gorgeous. Um, you could certainly do all of that this custom quilting in all of those little bits and pieces. It would take forever, I'm sure. And it might just overwhelm the quilt. I feel like this one, it's got this kind of, I mean, there's a lot going on here, but there is this simplicity about it, kind of the outer edges. There's a place for your eye to rest. And then as you get in closer, then you see all of this custom work. And I think it was really, it's a good choice, I think, to have some of these just narrow borders that don't have any piecing in them, but that they could pack all of this beautiful quilting in. And it's a nice balance. I really like this, whatever this design is. It's sort of like a little trefoil type thing. And then it's got these little circles, I guess, kind of like a bud and berries, maybe, is what that is, or what it represents. I don't know. Oh gosh, look at this. Look at all of that and around the New York Beauty. Are they spires? Are they starburst? I'm not really sure. Um, I have made something similar to a New York Beauty. It's like a compass. I did it, and I did it. It was very small. I ended up cutting, like I printed the pattern on cardstock, and I cut it up and I made it like English paper piecing style, because I knew I would never, ever, ever get these little teeny tiny, skinny little arms to come to, these nice points and not just be lopped off. And I think that's part of the challenge of a New York Beauty. The other part of it is you're not just working like, you think about a traditional star pattern and you might have some points, but you're working like the base of the star is flat, right? So you've got the points coming off of this like central part in the middle, or a point in the middle if you're talking about, if the points started as diamonds. But you've kind of got these like straight areas that they radiate out. Well, with the New York Beauty, the whole thing is curved. You're trying to inset these tiny little pointy um elongated triangles, essentially is what they are, but they're like starburst spire type things, and they're set in a curve. So the distance would be different than if they were set on a flat plane. So, that's kind of, I mean, that's at least two of the challenges of a New York Beauty. Anybody that can successfully piece a New York Beauty, I bow down to you, because um, I know I have not mastered it, and it's pretty amazing. Very cool. All right, this one is called checkerboard. Now, they've done a little play on words here, and when they say board, it's not board like a checkerboard, it's a checker board, BORED. And this one's a challenge because I'm not exactly sure where this is. Could be England, it could be New Jersey, it could be Massachusetts. So they are the Cambridge Modern Quilt Guild, and their handle is Cambridge Modern Quilt Guild. Um, CAMBRIDGE, Cambridge. Cambridge is a pretty common city name in the US, also in England. So I'm not sure. My guess is probably it's either Massachusetts or New Jersey, but they don't say. The triangles are flying and the circles are marching around the checkerboard, and a few pieces have even escaped off their assigned squares. This quilt showcases the representation across the Cambridge Modern Quilt Guild, from novice sewists to experienced quilters. So this is one I think that this is they've purposely designed something that works for both levels of skill. And I love that. I think that is just that's so fantastic. It's a huge challenge. Okay, we're in Birdbird says Cambridge, Massachusetts. Okay. I know I mentioned this when we came back from QuiltCon. Massachusetts was represented. There was a lot of the quilts. Just a significant number. There's hundreds of quilts down in the big exhibit hall. But I kept noticing people from Massachusetts. It was just interesting. So whatever you got, whatever's in the water there in Massachusetts, Jill, I don't know if you're still listening. there's some good quilt energy in that water. So yeah, this is just interesting to me, just from the perspective of like looking at what's happening here. These these triangles are kind of doing a dance, and you've got this block here. Um, I'm not sure what to say the block is. Is the block this single square with this triangle in it? I mean, those are not half square triangles. They are, but they're not. Like, the way this was pieced, you could see piecing lines here. So they are half square triangles, but it's the way that they've chosen the color. So I guess what I'm seeing is, I don't think I have a notation device on here. So you have to look up the hand here. But it's this right here is the singular block, and you can see it here too, right? So it's a half square triangle where one half is just your traditional half square triangle and the other half is been cut in half again. I think that's what's happening with these. And then over here, we've got very traditional sort of size and shape drunkard's path, but the colors are kind of mixed up here. So there's not that strong like drunkard's path sort of meander. They sort of work independently and individually. And then these, of course, these triangles. And then this down here, that is interesting. That is not a drunkard's path. That is literally like a curved piece. And I'm wondering if it's appliqued in or if it's pieced in. That's a pretty dramatic curve to piece in, but maybe this is where their experienced quilters lent their skills here. This is another one where, I think it looks more complex than the individual parts are, but I also think there was a lot of thought that went into deciding how to lay this out and maybe who did what. And I also love the quilting here is this sort of, and I've seen this pattern, a similar pattern at least, where it's kind of like a lightning bolt zigzag, and then it turns, I think, and then it goes the other way, and there's kind of like a little bars in here that sort of are in between. A lot of movement in this, obviously. It's another very cool one. Oh my gosh. More New York beauty-ish kind of work here. This one's very symmetrical, but stunning. This one is called Porcelain Medallion, And it is by, um, this is another one I'm not entirely sure. Corvallis Modern Quilt Guild, and Corvallis is spelled Corvallis. And their handle is Corvallis Modern QG. Okay, so Oregon. Okay, that was what I was thinking. It was either like Pacific Northwest somewhere is where I was thinking. But I don't know if is there a Corvallis anywhere else? I think that you're right. Word Bernard, assuming you didn't look it up and confirm that. Um, Robin has an interesting question. I'm wondering how many guilds used some sort of AI to help design their quilts. Um, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say not that many. Um, Now AI in the modern quilting space, there is conversation about that. There was a lecture. I unfortunately had to miss it, and I'm bummed about that. But um, there is definitely thought and energy going into AI and quilting. But I would venture to guess most of these guilds would have sort of eschewed, pushed aside AI and said, no, not in these. Um, I mean, I don't know. It's entirely possible, but my guess, if I just had to throw it out there, I'm gonna say probably not very many in these quilts. Now the quilts that were down, in the big exhibits, I know that there were a couple that did explicitly state they had done something with AI, whether it was feeding something in and getting something back out, not necessarily the design per se, but and I want to even say no, there was not a yeah, I'm not sure. I was thinking maybe was there a category? There was no category for that. Um there is a Sakwa exhibit that's coming up or has been touring that is about AI. And I think all of the quilts have something to do with AI, whether they're representing AI or were made using AI. I'm not sure. It's really interesting. I mean, I haven't really messed with AI in a minute. I kind of took a break from it. So many major changes. I have to get back into that. And I do want to know what other people are doing in terms of like, you know, hand work and quilting. What are people? Why are people? Like what's going on there with AI? Has it gotten good at anything creative? Okay, so Word and Bird Nerd is just good at at cities and states. You didn't have to look it up. I definitely would have had to look that up. Okay, so Corvallis Modern Quilt Guild, inspired by the timeless beauty of blue and white china, this quilt design captures the elegance of porcelain patterns in fabric form. I like that. The medallion layout evokes the intricate symmetry of decorative plates with radiating points and delicate contrasts of aqua, azure, and royal blue on crisp white. Each ring, and so they're calling the medallion borders a ring, and it kind of is. Each ring builds upon the next like layered brushstrokes of cobalt glaze, blending tradition and modern geometry into a serene, luminous centerpiece. Word for Nerd used to work at the headquarters of AAA. You know what? I love that. It's those oddball like ways that you end up with like a whole lot of knowledge about something. I love that. That's one of those things like when I'm kind of feeling like sort of down on myself and my skills, like when I fail at something, I have to remind myself, what bizarre thing are you really, really good at by virtue of the strange jobs you've had or the variety of jobs you've had? I kind of keep a mental filing cabinet of that stuff. Um, I know all of the horrible, misogynist, filthy acronyms that electricians use. And no, I will not tell you what they are here. You can Google them. But yes, electricians use some really interesting mnemonic acronym type things to remember circuits and colors and stuff. So I know that that's off. I know I'm digressing here, but um, your your coworkers dubbed you the Internet Queen, the tour book department. You know, it's interesting. You mentioned AAA. My mom had put me on her AAA account last year, and we were just talking about AAA and how people's use, like how you use AAA, has probably changed. I remember back in the day, anytime my grandmother was going to go somewhere, she would go to the local AAA office and get a triptych, which was like a big map, and they would use a highlighter to highlight your route. And I think about the fact that you know, ask your average 20-year-old today, somebody who's maybe not been driving very long, so they have to have only known, Google Maps or Waze or one of those GPS enabled, map applications. And you say triptych to them and they're going to look at you like, I have no idea. Did you get those out of phone booths or something? Like Um, oh, okay. So Robin asked because Elizabeth Townsend Gard asked the Just Wanna Quilt Facebook group if people were using AI in their quilting. She has begun playing around with Claude. Interesting. Yeah. Is that Robin? Is that Facebook group? Is it like part of her like paid community, or is that like can anybody join that group? Just out of curiosity. Um, yeah. It was a strip map bound in a little booklet. You flipped the page as you followed your route. Yes, I distinctly remember my grandparents with that. My grandmother was terrified of being lost, and so she was a very good map reader. And she didn't like to drive. She was kind of little. She didn't learn how to drive until she was probably about the time she had my mom, so her late 20s. Um, and yeah, she was just being on time and where she was supposed to be was very important to her. So we've digressed. Okay. Um, so this quilt, Corvallis's quilt, I think it's really the colors certainly do evoke that china for me. For sure, I have some of that like blue willow china. I think is probably what they're, that porcelain. Um, it definitely the colors they've got it spot on with the colors. Um, I don't know that without the description I would have otherwise, gotten the idea of the china, but this is just I think this is a very pleasing pattern. This is kind of like, modern quilting and contemporary quilting kind of at its best. And I think this is a very beautiful quilt. All right. Okay, you guys, this is the Baltimore Modern Quilt Guild. Um, oh, okay. Robin says anybody can, okay. Yeah, anybody can join the Elizabeth Townsend Gard. If you're not familiar with who Elizabeth Townsend Gard is, she is an attorney, but she's also a quilter. But I think she's a teaching attorney. So like she teaches like law school classes for up and coming lawyers. But she kind of infuses quilting into her her lesson planning. She also has a podcast. I don't know if she's still doing the podcast, but I do know she's taught classes in copyright topics. So that's kind of what her focus is. I think she's a copyright attorney. So she knows copyright stuff really well. And copyright is such a sticky, like, impossible to navigate topic for artists and creative people. Um, so yeah, what she teaches and lectures about is really interesting and very helpful. Um, but yeah, I noticed she always is. She looks at things that kind of affect copyright, and so it makes perfect sense to me that she's asking about AI. So that's interesting. Um, let's see. Yeah, she's written a couple books too. I forgot about that. Yeah, in fact, I have one of them, I think. But yeah, I've done one of her lectures before. So yeah, more AAA nostalgia. Oh, too funny. Oh my gosh. So Murd Birdner drove from Maryland to New Mexico Not a difficult drive, straight west. I went from Virginia to San Diego one time. We won't talk about that. Still gives my mom, like, she gets triggered. Okay, so this one, of course, is the Baltimore Modern Quilt Guild, I think. Or is it Maryland? Oh, it's Baltimore. Um, so this one is called Crack the Crab Open and Find the Goodness Inside. This is by Baltimore Modern Quilt Guild. Their handle is Baltimore MQG. I am not a member, but I do know many of their members, and they are a fun group. So they say, our guild logo became the perfect center for our medallion quilt. So yes, their guild logo is a crab. So I'll zoom in here so you can see it. Blue crabs are life here. If you don't like seafood, or you've never attempted to pick a crab, I'm sorry to tell you, you have to leave the state. People with seafood allergies get a special pass, but, you know, you're just not as special as the rest of us. I'm kidding, y'all. Okay. So they used their logo for the center of the medallion. We cracked our crab open and found improv triangles. When asked to contribute, what did they say? X? Oh, X or plus blocks. So that's what these are. So these type of blocks, I think, and we saw a number of quilts in the other color pattern that used this. And it's like a slash block where you inset the strip. When we asked them to contribute these blocks to indicate whether or not our members loved crabs, we were surprised by the range of opinions. It turns out that although crab feasts are a beloved fixture of family celebrations throughout Baltimore and Maryland, not everybody loves crabs. The title is inspired by the amazing Baltimore poem by Kandwani Fidel. And you can see the poem is actually the quilting on here. So, hey, Num Maker, you love crabs, yeah. It was really funny when I first moved to Maryland. I was in my early 20s, and I came as for part of a job, and all of the local Marylanders were just like, well, we're gonna have to take you to a crab feast so you can learn how to pick crabs, and I'm like, dude, I'm from Virginia. We're on the Chesapeake Bay too. Like, I know crabs. So it's funny, but yes, we're very judgmental about our crabs. But you can see all of the accoutrements of, we've got the Old Bay, if like, you put it on everything. Beer, of course, the crab mallet, the crab bib, much like a lobster bib, corn. Some people steam, some people boil. When you boil, you throw corn and potatoes in there. That's kind of a New England thing, but people here do it too. Although you probably will get in trouble if you boil, because technically crabs should be steamed. But here's a bushel of crabs, a bushel basket. Here's the implements. My guess is that various members did, these ones around the edge. With their, I don't know, maybe they came up with what, together what these were going to be, or maybe they wanted to do like their favorite, waterway implement thing. This is I'm pretty sure this is a buoy, like the thing, and they're connected to a crab trap. So this is a crab trap. Very, very cute, like just charming, and I did not realize, I did read this, but I guess it just didn't stick with me that it was an X or a plus depending on whether they like crabs or not. Amen Maker, I won't eat a crab cake except when in Maryland. Anything else just ain't right. Amen, sister. Because people don't make crab cakes right. When you hear Maryland style crab cake and you're in another state, particularly a landlocked state like in the middle of the country, I am sorry. I'm sorry, Missouri. I don't want your crab cakes. Kansas, love you to death. Do not serve me a crab cake. Let's see. So where you are, crawfish and shrimp are boiled with corn sausage and potatoes. Yeah. That's that is either New England or you mentioning crawfish, so that could be like word Bernard is saying Low Country, or that can also be Louisiana too, in the Gulf states. Um, oh my gosh, Druid, you've never had crab legs? Okay, crab legs you will not find here. Crab legs are a different thing. They are from the cold water crabs, the Alaskan king crabs. Their bodies are about the size of a golf ball, and their legs are like 20 feet long. So, um, Panhandle of Florida. So you're Gulf Coast. Okay. Um, yeah, really, Druid. Oh my goodness. Girl, we're gonna have to get you out here. And what did you say? You've had lobster once? Okay. Um, I gotta be honest. I'm not a gigantic fan of lobster. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's good. Um, it is, it's one of those like expensive foods that I don't necessarily love that much. But yeah, crabs are very special. And really, the crabs here in Maryland, blue crabs, they're not huge. They're, sometimes, when the conditions in the bay are very good, and they have been, they've been very good, the pollution and all the stuff, they've cleaned all that up, the crabs are thriving. But, sometimes the crabs don't get big. And sometimes they do. And when they're the big meaty crabs, they charge more for them because it's by weight. Um, you really don't get a lot out of them. It is really a social thing, picking crabs. My husband, like, literally will not. He will have me pick the crab for him, which, you pick it, it takes you like forever to pick all the meat out, and then somebody just grabs a handful and go. So it's really more of a thing, you're drinking beer, you're hanging out, talking. You might end up getting like, I don't know, an ounce of crab meat. Big ass crabs that turn over garbage cans and stuff. Oh my God. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, like, I think there's a bunch of different Asian varieties of crabs that they're big and they're weird. Like those mitten crabs, those ones that their pinchers are like hairy. They call them the mitten crabs. I've heard their meat is very good. Like I think their shells are very hard, but their meat is good. They're an invasive species. So all right, I gotta move on. See, like, I could literally talk for hours about a single quilt. And oh, I know somebody did ask. Yes, the I can't remember, was that Word and Bird Nerd? The quilting itself is the words to this poem. Um, it's about cracking the crab opening, finding the goodness within, and yeah. Shoot one of those and eat it. I'm very partial to crustaceans. I'm not a big fish person, but I do love shellfish and crustaceans, I have to say. Um, so now there is more to that quilt. There's stuff on the back. Um, if we can get to it, and I just realized I've talked for so long. We're gonna go over today. Um, let's see. Eh, This one I think is lovely. It reminds me of something, and I cannot put my finger on it. I don't know if it's like an album cover or a book illustration or something. It reminds me of something very specific. And I think it's probably this curvy stuff here. You've got these curved, kind of gives you this like sort of, that kind of movement. That must be what it's evoking for me, but I cannot figure out what it is. Um, Oh, have a good time. Say hello to Carolyn for me. Of course, I got to see her multiple times this uh this weekend. She is such a delight. If you guys don't know who Carolyn Gibbs is, look her up. She's so fantastic. She's a Yeah, so she has a heritage quilting club that you can belong to. But she teaches, she's a British quilter. She teaches, she's just fantastic. Pinball machine, maybe? Maybe? Oh my gosh, I think you guys might have hit the nail on the head there. The animation, I think it's either from Sesame Street or the Electric Company. I think it's Sesame Street. And it's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight. That's what this reminds me of. It's got that vibe. And I say that in like, it brings up like fond emotions for me. Like that's what I got from looking at this. This one. No, wait a minute. Do I have the right thing for this one? Okay. Apparently the Brisbane Modern Quilt Guild have two quilts. um so yeah, Brisbane Modern Quilt Guild. So their handle, Brisbane MQG. Our quilt embodies the community of our guild. In true blue Aussie fashion, we regularly come together to chat, eat, and celebrate all things quilting. At the center of this original quilt is a pinwheel representing our fun and creative group, surrounded by unique borders, pieced and appliqued by different members of the guild, interlacing and supporting one another, like our members do on our quilting journeys. Okay, I like that. Um, yeah, this one is just fantastic. You know, and again, lots of pointy stuff, but lots of curves. Um, and I would say that this curved a bit in here. It's not really continuous, but your eye wants to continue it, right? Your eye wants to do this. That is a really effective design. Um, an aspect of the design that keeps you kind of going, and then you've got the geese that are helping your eye move. And I love this little curvy scallopy doodad strip here. I love that. Okay, this is called Moonlit Tide by the Jacksonville Modern Quilt Guild, and their handle is Jax, JAX, MQG. So Jacksonville would be in Florida. So they say created from QuiltCon's Community Outreach Challenge themed medallion using the chosen assigned blues palette, inspired by our experiences with improv, members stitched freely, some wildly, some cautiously, proving that creativity ebbs and flows like the tide. 40 quilters contributed blocks. Designer Diane Birch wrangled them into harmony. Tara Benyako beautifully quilted, and Candy Lennox bound it all together. Proceeds support the Jax MQG and its ongoing outreach, including contributions to family support services and community hospice. So I'm guessing maybe their quilt was not available for purchase here at QuiltCon. That it was, I guess, possibly going to be a charity quilt for their own community. So this is and here's what's interesting. We get a lot of these slashed blocks. And I'll go out on a limb here to say that modern quilting loves those slashed blocks. But also I think they are kind of a foundational piecing skill that a lot of newer quilters learn how to do. You often see people taking classes, and that slashed block is one of those things that sort of improv quilting, improv piecing teaches. And also it's just really just a simple, like, there is no way to mess it up. So I think it's a really empowering kind of thing to start with if you're a new quilter. Now, I'm not saying that every single guild made that decision, why that they had these, but I suspect there might be something to that their newer quilters can contribute something like this. And it's still very pleasing. It doesn't, you don't have to have matching points and things like that. So, yeah, I love what they did here. They've got these corners here, and very strong the circular piece in the middle. I mean, they're essentially giant drunkard's path blocks here in the center. Um, Very cool. And again, like 40 people contributing to this. I think there was one of the quilts that we looked at last time. I think had 100 contributors. So when you have that many people, it's hard to to put all this stuff together, and so they have to make like really very pointed decisions in what they do, because you don't want somebody like a new quilter to bring you their block and you go, oh crap, that's not gonna fit. You want it to be like, no matter what skill the person has, that they can successfully make a block to contribute, and then that it integrates seamlessly into the design. That's a huge, you know that's you won the battle making the quilt when you can do that. Oh my goodness, look at this one. All of those little churn dashes. Very interesting little quilt. It's not little, but um so this is called Michigan is 41.5% water. By the Ann Arbor Modern Quilt Guild. Their handle is A and then the number 2 MQG. So A, letter A, 2 MQG. And they say, at a meeting, Rossi and Dory said they'd be willing to lead the project. We don't have a drawing, they added, because in our experience, that's not how medallions work. You begin and they tell you what they want next. Work days and homework assignments ensued. Many hands and much collaboration made this quilt. Blocks were pulled from Make Your Own Medallion and made from member sketches. So that's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I guess that concept of make the center and then the next part will like declare itself. Um, that's a fun way of going about it, and I mean that sincerely. Like, of course, there is the chance that you get something crazy. Um, but I think what they got, how they executed this is fantastic. I'm trying to see. Oh, look at this. Okay. I couldn't tell if this was like some stitching, but looks like it's a striped fabric they inserted here. That is visually so interesting. They've inserted it's striped piece in here in these geese, and it's got this like flowing effect. That is very neat. Another more is more that I very much enjoy. Okay. This, I mean, you want to talk about something that's like a very interesting decision. It's just the medallion itself, and it is off center. Um, and then, you've got this wave like quilting, which is interesting because it is called wave. Let me center this. Let's see that better. So this is the Seacoast Modern Quilt Guild. I don't know where that is. But they said, being the Seacoast Modern Quilt Guild, we took the inspiration from our logo and location near the ocean. The medallion represents a wave churning in a much larger blue ocean. Even though it's only one wave, it can make a difference. So I don't know how true to their medallion this is, or I'm sorry, their logo that this medallion is, but it's an interesting, like block or shape here. Because you have these little doodads coming off the tip of the shape. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of some. I guess it probably looks more complex than it is. Once you start to sort of piece, figure out what the piecing is. But a very modern. I mean, this hits all the rules of modern quilting. And I don't want to say rules. Rules is the wrong thing to say. All of the aspects of modern quilting. You've got this very bold design here, and then you have all of this negative space. And for them, it's an ocean. Without reading the description, I think there's a lot of, you could look at this in a lot of ways. It certainly evokes ocean very strongly, even if you don't read their statement. But yeah, the use of negative space is it's really big with modern quilting. And I think that this is very successful. I've seen other quilts where you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, that's all negative space. But yeah, this I think, is it's very simple and peaceful. Look at this. We've got more of those slashed cross blocks and this very strong piece in that goes to the center. Like that took planning. That took some like, really strong hardcore planning to get this two-tone look in these things, to get it to integrate. Well, let's see. I can't remember who this is by. This is another one of our international groups. So this is called The Skies of Scotland. And this is by the Edinburgh Modern Quilt Guild. And their handle is Edinburgh MQG, and that's spelled EDINBURGH, and then MQG. So a medallion quilt made of blocks inspired by raindrops, flying geese, abstract crosses, clouds, and condensation trails coming together to represent the saltire, the national flag of Scotland, pieced and appliqued. And remember, Wern Bernard, she had to leave. I hope she'll be able to come back and see this if she didn't, catch it already some other way. But definitely the flag, the Scottish flag, absolutely that X. That's very cool. I also really love their use of this block. Um, I don't think these could be improv. I'm not sure. So while the slash, the cross or the X, that slash block, that's kind of like the 101. I think this is the 102, or like the graduate level, the 300 level. um where you're slashing a curve and you're piecing a curve in. So I think that's what these are. I'm not positive, but I think that's might be what those are. Gosh, another really interesting one. And the symbolism here for them, even though just looking at this, we don't know, um, without reading their statement. I still love that there's the things in here that they recognize as their own. Bear with me one sec, and let me see how many more we have. uh, are we nearing the end? I might end up having to do a few on Thursday. We still have a bit to go. Okay, so this one let's do two more, and then we'll come back and get the last few on Thursday. So this one is called Lake Superior Waves and Whitecaps. So, I think this one is one of those ones where it's got the place in there, but it's very symbolic. So we need to read their. I thought that I always think that reading off of my phone is going to be the easiest, and then it acts funky. Okay, so Lake Superior MQG, their handle is Lake Superior MQG. And oh gosh, what's on Lake Superior, you guys? Is it Michigan? I think there's a number of New York. There's a number of states that are Lake Superior. Ooh. Okay. LSMQG member Kelly Winters designed this quilt using blocks created by 9 of our guild members in 2024 for a row by row sew along. That's fun. The guild chose the blue color palette because it is reminiscent of our guild's namesake, Lake Superior. Over 3 sewing days, 20 guild members, another big group, participated in the construction of the top. Special thanks to guild members Ruth Ann Grace for her wonderful quilting and Anne Lou Hovis for binding the quilt. This is a really fun one. And things are very improv-y and funky, and I just love it. These are very cool. Lots of neat stuff going on here. I feel like Lake Superior is Michigan, right? I'm so bad with geography. I guess I need a job someplace like where Bernard had back in the day with AAA. So I could learn some better geography. Wow, so much in here is based on traditional, but it's wonky stars, and these circular elements are again just they're drunkard's path blocks, or it's a millstone. I think the one that's a complete circle with the four quadrants is called millstone, but it's essentially, you break it down and um, it's a drunkard's path. So Druid says Lake Superior straddles the U.S.-Canada border. It's bound by Ontario and Minnesota and Wisconsin and Michigan. Okay. Yes, Robin, I do. I need my timeline that's going to probably stretch all around the universe, because so many dates we need to know that I always am begging you guys to remind me of, and a world map. Well, let's just start with the US map first. Then I can expand into world geography. I am, according to oh, look at these teeny tiny little crosses. Um, I am probably smarter than the average 5-year-old when it comes to finding something on a map. So the single closest city is, as Lake Superior is vast, major cities directly on its shores include Duluth, Minnesota, and its twin city, Superior, Wisconsin. At the western end is Marquette, Minnesota, or Marquette, Michigan, I'm sorry. And on the southern shore, and Thunder Bay, Ontario on the north. So, yeah, this guild could be any one of those areas potentially. Well, whichever state or potentially Canadian city they are in, I love their quilt. It's very cool. Okay, let us do this. I want to show you. Oh no, this is going to be a perfect stopping point. Okay, you got to see the back of the Baltimore quilt. So it's more of these blocks, but you see our little friend here. It's the Natty Boh guy. And Natty Boh is National Bohemian beer. It was at one time made here in Maryland. It is no longer made in Maryland. It is bottled elsewhere. In fact, I think it might be like somewhere like Wisconsin or Michigan or something where it's bottled now. But it is still distributed here. You can still get it. But he's very iconic looking gentleman. And, if you've ever traveled through Maryland, lived here even for a little bit, you would recognize him. He's very popular. And he's often paired with the Utz potato chip girl. And even though Utz is from Pennsylvania, just north of us, Hanover, because they kind of have this very similar look to them, they will often be paired together for like funny memes. There is a local jewelry store, and I can't remember which one it is. But it's a Baltimore-based jewelry store that a number of years ago, it's probably been at least 10 years ago, they had the Natty Boh man propose to the Utz girl with one of their diamonds. And the billboards were everywhere, and it was so cute. And I love that kind of stuff, that sort of community stuff that gets people like, there's that sense of nostalgia, there's the sense of like, this is my place, I'm from there, I recognize this. I just love things like that. It's one of those things that it brings people together. I don't love sports ball, but our sports teams also tend to bring people together, within in a state or local region. So, I really love stuff like that. We have our ubiquitous crab cracker, which is essentially like a nutcracker kind of thing. And let's see, the other side says Baltimore. And they pieced that in that block piece lettering. I can't remember if that was Huh. There's a book that was published. It's kind of early in the modern quilt movement time period that showed how to, they had a whole pattern for piecing these letters. So I don't know if that's them or not, but hey, cool stuff. Am I smarter than a fifth grader? No, absolutely not. I often have to request, tell me like I'm a 5-year-old. All right, so I think we're gonna have to finish these up on Thursday, guys. I somehow managed to blab and talk and run my mouth for a very long time, and there were less blue quilts than there were those the other color palette. I was feeling chatty today, so yeah, we will finish these on Thursday. Looks like there's about 8 or 9 left, and they are all equally gorgeous. So I don't want to leave them out. I want to make sure they get eyeballs on them too. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I like I said earlier, um, last week when we started looking at these quilts are just, they're amazing to me for so many reasons. The community aspect, the really brilliant decisions that these guilds made to make these things come to fruition. Because you can imagine, get together a handful of people, whether it's 5 or 20 or 40 or 100. These are the kind of numbers. Some of these quilts, it was probably a core small group. Other quilts, 100 contributors. That's wild. How do you make these things, come to fruition and, without being a big mess or without being, scattered and not cohesive? I would say every single one of these quilts did such a fantastic job of that. So, kudos to the guilds, kudos to the planners, and all of the contributors. I mean, they're amazing to me. And while of course the individual quilts, down on the big show are fantastic, but I also think that, lots of heart went into these, and I just love looking at them. So, all right, let's close up shop for today because I gotta go edit some videos. um, yeah, we'll be back on Thursday, and I hope for everybody your weather is good. My East Coast friends, oh my God, I just hear the wind howling at my house right now. So, Robin, stay cool. Druid, stay warm and safe. Dry. Everybody on the East Coast, batten down the hatches. Yeah, I will see you guys on Thursday. Mwah! Bye.